Hey, what's up? What's happening, everybody? Welcome to my YouTube channel, Sports Life and Politics TV. Today, we'll be discussing mind control, and that's something that's it's big because it's like a lot of conspiracy theories behind it. But I don't want to deal in conspiracies. I want to go with factual things that actually happen. So today, we're going to go over this article right here. It said the CIA's secret quest for mind control, torture, LSD, a poisoner in chief. I guess that was the guy's nickname. I'm gonna start reading right now. Say during the early periods of the Cold War, the CIA became convinced that the communists had discovered a drug or a technique that would allow them to control human minds. In response, the CIA began its own secret program called MK Ultra to search for a mind control drug that could be weaponized against its enemies. So basically, the first paragraph is kind of just saying, that they thought the communists, the Russians, had figured it out. So they were in a hurry to hurry up and get this figured out too. MK Ultra, which operated from the 50s into the early 60s, was created and run by a chemist named Sidney Gottlieb. Journalist Stephen Kinzer, who spent several years investigating the program, calls the operation the most sustained search in history for techniques of mind control. Some of Gottlieb's experiments were covertly funded at universities and research centers. Kinzer says, while others were conducted in American prisons and detention centers in Japan, Germany, and Philippines. Many of these unwitting subjects endured psychological torture ranging from electroshock therapy, electric shock to high doses of LSD, according to Kinzer. And that's interesting that they said prisons, because it was a lot of black people who probably came out of jail with all type of problems and nobody knew, because all this stuff was pretty much secret. Gottlieb wanted to create a way to seize control of people's minds, and he realized it was a two-part process. Kinzer says, first, you had to blast away the existing mind. Second, you had to find a way to insert a new mind in that resulting void. We didn't get too far on number two, but he did a lot of work on number one. That's conjecture. You don't know how far he got because most of the information was destroyed. A lot of that, they destroyed that. Let's keep reading. Kinzer noted that the top secret nature of Gottlieb's work makes it impossible to measure the human cost of the experiments. We don't know how many people died, but a number did. How many lives were permanently destroyed, he says. Ultimately, Gottlieb concluded that mind control was not possible. That's a lie. After MK Ultra shut down, he went on to lead the CIA program that created poisons and high-tech gadgets for spies to use. Kinzer writes in Gottlieb's MK Ultra, his new book, Poisoner in Chief, how the CIA brought LSD to America. As a part of the search for the drug that would allow people to control the human mind, CIA scientists became aware of the existence of LSD, and this became an obsession for the early directors of MK Ultra. Actually, the MK Ultra director Sidney Gottlieb can now be seen as the man who brought LSD to America. He was the unwitting godfather of the entire LSD counterculture. In the early 1950s, he arranged the CIA to pay $240,000 to buy the world's entire supply of LSD. He brought this to the United States. He began spreading it around to hospitals, clinics, prisons, and other institutions, asking them through bogus foundations to carry out research projects and find out what LSD was, how many people reacted to it, and how it might be able to be used for a tool for mind control. Now, the people who volunteered for these experiences began taking LSD. In many cases, found it very pleasurable. They told their friends about it. Who were those people? Ken Kinsley, the author of The One That Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. He got his LSD in an experiment sponsored by the CIA and MK Ultra by Sidney Gottlieb. So did Robert Hunter. The lyrics for The Grateful Dead, which went on became a great I'm sorry, I lost where. A great purveyor of LSD culture. Allen Ginsberg, the poet who preached the value of great personal adventure of LSD, got his first LSD from Sidney Gottlieb, although of course he never knew that name. The CIA brought LSD to America unwillingly, in tremendous irony that the drug that the CIA hoped that would be its key to controlling humanity actually wound up fueling a generation of rebellion that was dedicated in destroying everything that the CIA held dear and defined. On how the MK Ultra experiment on prisoners, including crime boss Whitey Bulger. Whitey Bulger was one of the prisoners who volunteered for what he was told was an experiment aimed at finding a cure for schizophrenia. As part of this experiment, he was given LSD every day for more than a year. He later realized that this had nothing to do with schizophrenia. He was a guinea pig in a government experiment aimed to seeing what people's long-term reaction to LSD was. Essentially, we could make a person lose his mind by feeding him LSD every day over such a long period. Bulger wrote afterwards about his experience, which he described as quite horrific. He thought he was going insane, he wrote. I was in prison for committing a crime, but they committed a greater one on me. And towards the end of his life, Bulger came to realize the truth of what had happened to him. He actually told his friends he was going to find that doctor in Atlanta who's head of the experiment program in the penitentiary and go and kill him. He was mad as hell. Who wouldn't be, though? And the CIA hiring Nazi doctors and Japanese torturers to learn methods. Interesting. And the United States after World War II, they hired a lot of Nazis in the space program, Werner von Braun, through scientists and doctors and all type of stuff. And all of them were part of the occult, too, by the way. The CIA mind control project, MK Ultra, was essentially a continuation of work that began in the Japanese and Nazi concentration camps. Not only was it roughly based on those experiments, but the CIA actually hired the vivisectionists and the torturers who had worked in Japan and the Nazi concentration camps to come and explain what they had found so that they could build on their research. For example, Nazi doctors had conducted extensive experiments with mescaline. A Dachau concentration camp, and the CIA was very interested to figure out whether mescaline could be the key to mind control, and that it was the big version of the investigation, the big avenues of the investigation. So they hired the Nazi doctors who had been involved in the project to advise them. Another thing the Nazis provided was information about poison gas like sarin, which is being used. Nazi doctors came to America, to Fort Derrick in Maryland, which there was a center of project to lecture the CIA officers, tell them how long it took for people to die from the sarin. On the more extreme experiments Gottlieb conducted overseas, Gottlieb and the CIA established a secret detention center throughout Europe and East Asia, particularly in Japan. Germany and Philippines were largely under American control in the periods of the 50s. Therefore, Gottlieb didn't have any worries about legal entanglements in these places. CIA officers in Europe and Asia were capturing these enemy agents and others who had felt might be suspected persons who were otherwise they called expendable. They would grab these people, throw them in cells, and then test all kinds of not just drug potions, but other techniques like electroshock, extreme temperature, sensory isolation. All of these, meantime, bombard them with questions, trying to see if they can break down the resistance to find a way to destroy the human ego. So these were projects designed not only to understand the human mind, but to figure out how to destroy it. And that made Gottlieb, although in some ways very compassionate person, compassionate, but certainly most prolific torturer of his generation. Did he just use compassionate person and prolific torture and the same. Boy, white people sure know how to give each other a pass. How you gonna call somebody compassionate who was doing that? Gottlieb operated completely without supervision. He had sort of a checkoff from the tutelary boss from his real boss, Richard Helms, from the CIA director, Alan Dulles, but none of them really wanted to know what he was doing. This guy had a license to kill. He was allowed to relinquish human subjects across the United States and around the world and subject them to any kind of abuse that he wanted, even up to the level of being fatal. Yet nobody looked over his shoulder. He had to file serious reports to. Listen, he never had to file serious reports to anybody. I think the mentality must have been that this project is so important, mind control, if it can be mastered, is the key to global world power. Let's see how Gottlieb destroyed evidence about this experiment when he left the CIA. At the end of Gottlieb's career in 1973, when his patron Richard Helms, who was then the director of the CIA, was removed by President Richard Nixon. Once Helms was gone, it was just a matter of time until Gottlieb was gone, but will be gone. And most important was that Helms was really the only person in the CIA who had any idea what Gottlieb was doing. So as they were both on their way out of the CIA, they agreed they should destroy all the records of MK Ultra. See, and that's what they don't want to tell you. Because a lot of these people, especially from back in the day, like Charles Manson, Jim Jones, all these people come out of the Process Church, all MK Ultra mind control. They did a lot, man, and they destroyed a lot of evidence. But it is evidence on, especially Charles Manson. He 100% came out of the Process Church. He 100% was an MK Ultra mind control subject. It said they agreed they should destroy all the records of MK Ultra. Gottlieb eventually drove out to the CIA Records Center and ordered the archives destroyed boxes of MK Ultra records. However, it turns out that there were some records found in other places. There was a depot for expense accounts reports that had not been destroyed, and various other pieces of papers remain. So there's not enough out there to reconstruct. There's enough out there to reconstruct some of what he did, but there's an effort to wipe away his traces by destroying all those documents in the early 70s was quite successful. Yeah, they were successful, but there also is a lot of evidence of what he did do, and there's a lot of MK Ultra still going on around today. And that was part of the reason I made this video. I'm going to make another video on this too. And I'm going to go into like maybe one on Charles Manson or maybe one on Jim Jones. If you don't know who Jim Jones is, that's the guy who had all the people down, all them black people and some white people down there drinking that damn killer Kool-Aid. But he most definitely come out of the Archive Church. What was the other guy in Waco? David Koresh. All of these people come out of these same little programs, and they have these God complex. See, and they experiment and test that and throw this out to the public, and they get these people to follow these people because these people really believe they were God or Jesus or whatever. But that comes from out of these processes of being experimented on. But I'm going to make another one, man. It's going to be a part 2 to this, man. I appreciate y'all tuning in. Thank you for viewing the video. Peace.